You walked into your father's 60th birthday party, believing it would be a night of joy and reunion. But in just a moment, everything shattered. Your parents looked at you with disappointment, comparing you to the brother they praised as the family's pride. He leaned back in his chair, smirking with arrogance as he said you might need another 50 years to find success. Laughter filled the room, but your heart went silent. In that very moment, your revenge story began. If you enjoy family stories filled with twists and drama, gently hit like and subscribe so you won't miss what comes next. You might think betrayal begins in a single moment, like that night at your father's birthday. But the truth is, it's never that simple. Stories like this have roots that stretch back through years filled with laughter, secrets only siblings could share, and bonds that once felt unbreakable. To understand why the wound cuts so deeply, you have to return to the beginning, to a childhood that was both ordinary and extraordinary. Back then, your family's house in Columbus sat in a quiet neighborhood lined with red maples. Summer nights carried the smell of freshly cut grass, and children's laughter echoed long past dusk. From the outside, your family looked like any other middle-class household. But inside, it was a world of its own, stitched together with memories, some warm and comforting, others bittersweet. You were the younger sibling, the dreamer, the one who filled sketchbooks with drawings of chairs, houses, and ideas that only existed in your imagination. To others, they looked like meaningless doodles. To you, they were blueprints of entire worlds waiting to be built. And Ethan, your older brother, was always right there. 4 years older, louder, more confident. He didn't fully understand your passion, but he believed in you with a certainty that made you feel unstoppable. You still remember those afternoons at school, when classmates laughed at your sketches. One girl sneered, "What's this? A table for ants?" Close quote. The others burst out laughing. Your cheeks burned, your hands trembling as you clutched your notebook. But before you could say anything, Ethan stepped forward. His teenage voice cracked but carried enough force to silence them. "Leave her alone. You don't get it. She's going to be something one day." That moment etched itself deep in your memory. Ethan wasn't just your brother, he was your shield, your ally, the one who made you believe you'd never have to face the world alone. Sitting beside you on the bleachers, he grinned and nudged your shoulder. "Don't listen to them. One day you design my whole living room." You laughed and promised him not just one room, but an entire house filled with your creations. Weekends were magical. You gave yourselves superhero names. You, the design dynamo, close quote, and him, the speedy sidekick. You raced bikes through sprinklers, collapsing in the grass with laughter until your stomachs ached. Those days felt endless, stretched wide by childhood imagination. Every evening carried the smell of your mom's chocolate chip cookies cooling on the counter. You and Ethan sneaked bites of dough when she wasn't looking, smearing flour on each other's faces until she sighed with a smile. You two are a handful. But her eyes shone with joy. Even your father, strict and disciplined, softened during football nights. He shouted at the TV, cheering for the Buckeyes, while you and Ethan rolled your eyes, but secretly loved those nights when everyone was together in one room. Back then, you never noticed any favorites. Everything felt equal. Everything felt whole. At night, under the dim light of whispered conversations, you shared your dreams. You wanted to design homes, to create safe spaces for people. He wanted to change the world, though he never said exactly how. "We'll do it together," close quote, he promised, his voice full of conviction. And you believed him. Completely. But time has a way of changing things. Slowly, silently, like wind slipping through a crack in the door. By the time you reached college, Ethan had already started to drift. He no longer looked at your sketches with admiration. Instead, he smirked. "Just artsy stuff. Not practical." It stung, but you swallowed the pain, telling yourself he was busy, that he was chasing something bigger. You never imagined the boy who once defended you would become the man who tore you down. Still, you clung to the memories, the flower fights, the whispered secrets, the promises of together. They convinced you the bond could never truly break. And maybe that's why the betrayals later on hurt so much. Because betrayal isn't just about the act, it's about who you thought someone was, and how deeply you believed they'd never hurt you. Your family always emphasized hard work and discipline. Your mom, an English teacher, encouraged your creativity, even if she didn't fully understand it. Your dad, a retired lawyer, lectured you both about responsibility, about making your mark in the world. Ethan soaked up every word, even mimicking your father's serious tone until you both stifled laughter. At the time, it seemed harmless. Looking back, you realize Ethan wasn't just listening, he was rehearsing, preparing for a role he'd one day play too well. Now, when you think back, your childhood feels like a photograph fading at the edges. The smiles are still there, the laughter's still frozen in time, but you know the ending. You know the promises of forever were destined to break. And that knowledge makes the present hurt all the more. Have you ever felt that way when the very person who once lifted you up became the one who dragged you down? That's the cruelty of family betrayal. It doesn't just destroy the present, it stains the past. The laughter of childhood becomes a knife, cutting deeper every time you remember. So when you sat silently at your father's birthday party, hearing laughter at your expense, your heart didn't just ache for the humiliation of that moment. It ached for the loss of everything that came before, for the boy who once defended you on the bleachers, who dreamed with you under the covers, who promised, "We'll do it together." Because now, he was the man smirking while the room laughed at you. If you feel this story in your heart, stay with us. Tap like is a way of saying you understand, and subscribe so you don't miss the turns still to come. Not because you owe anyone, but because every click is a reminder. You're not alone in carrying scars left by the very people you once trusted most. The memories of childhood still lingered inside you, but as adulthood unfolded, everything began to change. When you were younger, the promise to do it together felt unshakable. And for a while, it seemed like that promise would come true when the two of you launched a company side by side. The idea was yours. In a cramped apartment in Columbus, you spent endless nights writing line after line of code, creating an app to help young people manage their spending. It wasn't just numbers, it was your vision, a simple but powerful tool for those who dreaded spreadsheets. When Ethan saw the first prototype, his eyes lit up. He couldn't stop talking about catchy slogans and flashy campaigns that would make people mention the app everywhere. At the start, everything felt right. You handled the technical side, while he managed the branding. Two pieces of a puzzle that seemed to fit. You typed late into the night until your eyes blurred, while he sketched big dreams of millions of users. You were happy, because you believed the childhood dream was finally coming alive. And then, the results arrived. Tens of thousands of downloads. Investors paying attention. Articles praising it as a breakthrough idea from Columbus. You still remember the day you landed the first check. $50,000. Your hands shook as you signed the contract, pride swelling in your chest. Ethan grabbed your hand, laughing. "We're going to change the world." Close quote, but reality rarely matches childhood promises. Success brought cracks you hadn't seen coming. Ethan posted office photos with captions like "Build this from the ground up." Each word cut deep. Build this, but who had written the endless code? Who had stayed behind alone at night fixing bugs? You felt yourself disappearing from the story he told the world. One day, during a meeting with a new investor, Ethan introduced you as support staff. Your stomach dropped. Support staff. You would build the product, lay the foundation that made his speeches possible. After the meeting, you asked him directly, "Why do you keep downplaying my role?" Close quote, he shrugged, barely looking up from his phone. "Someone's got to do the grunt work. I'm the one who makes it shine." You went quiet, but inside, something cracked. The brother who once stood between you and the bullies was now the one raising you. The breaking point came when Ethan pushed for reckless expansion, adding cryptocurrency features to the app. You warned him the data showed nothing but red flags, the market too volatile. But he brushed you off, saying you were too cautious. The whole team got pulled into his plan. Within 6 months, the crash hit. The market plunged, the app malfunctioned, users complained in waves. The company lost over $300,000 in days. You stayed up nights, combing through the numbers, patching broken features, but nothing could stop the collapse. Ethan stormed in one evening, his face red with anger. "This is all on you. You failed to execute." You blinked in disbelief. "I told you it was risky." He scoffed. "You're not cut out for big decisions. Stick to the small stuff." Those words hurt more than the financial loss. They raised every sacrifice, every sleepless night. Worse, your parents echoed his judgment. At dinner, your mother sighed. "Maybe you should let your brother lead. You're better at supporting roles." Your father nodded, his voice firm. "He's got the vision. You don't." You gripped your fork, throat tight, unable to argue. In that moment, you felt yourself shrinking, pushed out of the very dream you had built. Not just colleagues, but even your own family began to see you as a shadow. You realized that the love and loyalty that once fueled your strength had turned into your deepest wound. The person who once promised together had now left you standing alone. Have you ever been in that place where your work is dismissed, your value erased, as if you were nothing? That night, sleep never came. You stared at your old sketchbooks, pages filled with dreams, and remembered his promise on the bleachers, his flower-covered face in the kitchen, the laughter that once felt eternal. And you finally saw it clearly. Ethan had changed. He was no longer the boy who defended you. He was a man chasing applause, willing to step on anyone, even you, to be praised. Deep inside, you knew. This was the beginning of the betrayal. If you've ever felt the sting of being overlooked by your own family, stay with this story. Tap like as a sign that you understand, and subscribe to follow along as the truth unfolds behind the smiles of family life. Not because we need it, but because each click is a reminder that you are ready to see what happens when loyalty fades and hidden wounds surface. After endless nights of denial and disappointment, you knew you couldn't go on like this. The longer you clung to the company, the more you felt like a shadow, fading, unnecessary, erased from the very dream you had built. One morning, you walked into Ethan's office, placed a letter on his desk, and said calmly, "I'm leaving. I'll build my own path." He leaned back in his chair, laughing, convinced you were bluffing. "You'll be back. You need this more than it needs you." You didn't answer. You simply packed your things, your heart heavy, but your resolve clear. For the first time in years, you chose yourself over the childhood promise. The early days of independence were brutal. You had nothing but a laptop, a rented office, and a world full of doubt. Investors turned you away, doors slammed shut. But you kept pushing, because you knew your worth wasn't in applause or praise, it was in your ability to build something real, something that belonged to you alone. Time passed, and the seeds you planted began to grow. Your investment firm, though small at first, quickly found its footing. You backed startups you watched from a distance, torn. As much as he had betrayed you, you couldn't forget the boy who once defended you. So when word came that his company was only weeks from collapse, you couldn't let it all fall apart. Instead of watching him drown, you funneled $2 million through a shell company and brokered a deal with a major firm. That lifeline was enough to keep him afloat. And, just like before, Ethan took the stage with his trademark smirk. "We just closed a $10 million deal," close quote, he announced, voice booming across the room. The audience clapped, the headlines poured in, the praise returned in waves. No one mentioned you. No one knew the truth. You sat in your small apartment, staring at your phone as his post spread across social media. Inside, pride mixed with bitterness. Once again, he stood in the light, and you remained invisible in the shadows. The peak came at your father's 60th birthday. The upscale restaurant glittered with chandeliers, packed with family, relatives, friends. Your father raised his glass, pride glowing in his eyes. "Ethan, you've brought honor to this family." Ethan bowed slyly, soaking up every clap, every cheer. Then your mother turned, her voice sharp. "And you, when will you stop running and finally do something worthwhile?" Close quote, your chest tightened. Ethan leaned back, smirk widening. "Probably in 50 years. Laughter erupted, echoing just like it had years ago. But this time, you didn't stay silent. You stood, pulled out your phone, and connected it to the projector. The screen lit up with proof contracts, emails, signatures, all showing that your firm had been the one to rescue Ethan's company. The evidence was clear, undeniable. The room froze. Ethan's face stiffened, his glass hovering mid-air. But then the murmurs began. Your mother narrowed her eyes. "You made this up to steal his spotlight." Your father shook his head. "Ridiculous. You left his company. Why would you help him now?" Close quote, Ethan snapped, jaw tight. "You're jealous. You can't handle my success, so you're inventing lies." Every gaze turned toward you, filled with doubt, suspicion, dismissal. And in that moment, you felt it all over again, your truth denied, your work erased. The people who once promised to protect you now stood as walls, cold and immovable. You looked across the room and found Clara, your one true ally. Her eyes urged you. Fight back. Speak louder. But you knew no words would pierce the armor of their disbelief. It was then you realized. You no longer needed their recognition. Not Ethan's. Not your parents'. Not anyone's. You shut off the projector, set your phone down, and said quietly, "Enjoy your party." Then you turned and walked out, your heels clicking steadily on the floor. Behind you, whispers rose, but you no longer felt crushed beneath them. You knew your revenge story wasn't about convincing them of the truth. It was about leaving, intact, with your dignity. When the restaurant doors closed behind you, an odd emptiness settled in. No more applause for someone else, no more mocking laughter ringing in your ears, only the sound of your own heartbeat, steady and firm. That night made one truth undeniable. You could no longer live in the shadow of your family, nor could you keep chasing recognition from those who never truly believed in you. The next morning, you sat in your office, watching the daylight spill across your desk. Your heart still carried heaviness, but your mind was sharp. You called your team, your voice calm. Pull every dollar from Ethan's company. Cancel the $10 million contract. No one objected. They knew you had endured enough. That decision was a blade, severing the last thread tying you to the brother who had once been your protector. Within days, the funds were gone, the contract dissolved, and Ethan's company plunged into chaos. News spread quickly. Shareholders furious, employees panicked, partners fleeing. Ethan, once hailed as a symbol of success, now stumbled under the weight of doubt and disappointment. You remained silent. No statements, no explanations. Everything that needed to be said had already been spoken at the birthday dinner, when truths long hidden finally came to light. Everything that needed proof had already been shown, and you knew the rest would unfold on its own, carried forward by time and consequence. Weeks later, the news broke. Ethan's company officially filed for bankruptcy. The headlines that once praised his daring ventures now screamed of failure, calling it a downfall long foretold. The very investors who had once chased him with open wallets now disappeared into the shadows, leaving him stranded. Contracts dissolved overnight, partnerships that once seemed unshakable evaporated without ceremony. He sold his sprawling house with its marble floors and endless glass windows, moving into a modest apartment tucked away at the city's edge. On social media, the transformation was even more brutal. His once curated feed of yachts, designer suits, and champagne dinners went eerily quiet. In its place came whispers, then open ridicule. Comment after comment poured in pity, mockery, even satisfaction at watching a man once untouchable crumble in public view. When you read the headlines, you felt no triumph. There was no surge of vindication, no desire to revel in his humiliation. Instead, what filled you was a quiet sadness, the kind that stings without sharp edges, like staring at an old photograph that has faded with time. Ethan had once been that boy racing beside you through childhood summers, the brother who whispered secrets under starry skies. But the path he had chosen, reckless ambition, deception, and pride had dragged you both into places where there was no turning back. Then, one morning, your parents arrived at your office without notice. Their presence carried a heaviness that settled in the room before they even spoke. Your mother's eyes were swollen with tears, her hands trembling as she clutched a worn handkerchief. Your father's face, usually stern, was carved with exhaustion and quiet despair. "You must help your brother," close quote, your mother pleaded, her voice breaking with each word. "He's lost everything. We can't let him fall like this. He needs you." Your father's tone was steadier, but no less desperate. "You've done well for yourself," close quote, he said firmly, though his voice carried the weight of fatigue. "But family must come first. Give him another chance. He is your brother." For a long moment, you didn't speak. You sat still, hands clasped together, as if holding yourself in place. Memories surged forward like waves crashing without mercy. Dinners, where comparisons left you invisible, nights when your voice was drowned out, years of quietly carrying Ethan's mistakes, only to watch him receive the recognition you deserved. You remember the sting of being dismissed, the ache of being overlooked, the cost of saving him once before while he took the glory. You drew a long breath, steadying yourself. "I can't," close quote, you replied at last, your tone even but resolute. "He has to face the consequences of his choices. I saved him once, but I won't shoulder his burdens forever. This is his path to walk." Your mother broke down into sobs, her shoulders shaking as her grief filled the silence. Your father shook his head slowly, disappointment etched into every line of his face. Without another word, they turned and left, their footsteps echoing through the hall. And in that moment, you knew something irreversible had happened. The distance between you and your family, once a wound, had widened into a canyon so vast it could never be bridged. Days later, your phone rang. You hesitated at the sight of his name, your thumb hovering above a screen before finally answering. Ethan's voice reached you, rough, trembling, stripped of the bravado that once defined him. "Anna," he began, the weight of his sorrow pressing through the line. "I'm sorry. I didn't know it was you who saved the company last time. I thought it was luck, or maybe someone else stepping in. I didn't know it was you. I need your help. Just one more chance. Please." You stay silent, your gaze fixed on the emptiness beyond your window. And in that silence, memories returned uninvited, the childhood promise of "we'll do it together," close quote, the flower fights in the kitchen when laughter came easily, the smirk he gave you at your father's birthday, when you both knew you had gotten away with a prank. For a fleeting second, you waited for compassion to stir, for the bond of blood to soften your heart. But it didn't. Instead, something else rose within you, a steady, unshakable resolve forged by years of pain and neglect. You realized that forgiveness, once freely given, had been spent long ago. What remained now was clarity. You lifted the phone back to your ear, your voice calm but cold, carrying the finality of a door closing. Then wait 50 more years. The line went silent. Somewhere on the other end, your brother's world cracked again, though this time it was not bankruptcy or headlines that undid him, it was you. And as you lowered the phone, you felt no victory, no thrill. Only the certainty that you had finally stepped free from the shadows of his choices, and for the first time, the story was truly your own. The line went quiet. Then came the hollow tone. You set the phone down, relief and sorrow colliding in your chest. For the first time, you had truly let go. From that moment, you poured yourself fully into your company. New deals came in, each contract signed like a stamp proving you had chosen the right path. Your office expanded, your team grew stronger. Invitations poured in for you to speak at conferences, to share your journey, to inspire young entrepreneurs. And this time, you stood alone on the stage, not overshadowed, not erased. You told your story, in your own words, without anyone stealing the light. One afternoon, you and Clara sat in a cozy cafe, celebrating your latest triumph. A $20 million deal with a biotech firm. Clara raised her cup, her eyes shining with pride. You did it. You didn't just survive, you built an empire from nothing. You laughed, the weight of years finally lifting from your shoulders. Looking back, you realized two things. First, your worth had never depended on recognition from your parents, your brother, or anyone else. For years, you had chased their approval, only to discover that the only validation that mattered was your own. Second, Ethan's downfall carried its own lesson. Success built on borrowed credit and hollow boasts cannot stand. When the truth emerges, the facade collapses. You no longer carried hatred. Instead, what lingered was pity and peace. You had walked through fire and emerged whole. This story had never just been about Ethan. It had been about you reclaiming your dignity, finding your voice, and turning pain into power. And that is how a revenge story ends, not with loud retaliation, but with the quiet pride of someone who has finally learned to live for themselves. The journey ended not with noise or triumph, but with the quiet strength of a heart that had finally learned to stand on its own. Looking back, every wound had turned into resilience, every dismissal into determination. People could deny your contributions, call you a shadow, but they could never erase the truth. You walked through the storm and built a future with your own hands. This story wasn't just about the downfall of a proud brother, it was about the awakening of a woman who dared to step out of her family's shadow and claim her true worth. And when the final light shone down, you realized that a revenge story doesn't always mean retaliation. Sometimes, it simply means living